During a live taping of Jimmy Fallon's show, a nervous fan stands up and hits Keanu Reeves with a shockingly personal question that stuns the entire studio into silence. What begins as an awkward confrontation turns into an emotional, viral moment as Keanu's calm, heartfelt answer changes the way everyone in the room sees him and themselves. Keanu Reeves thought it would be another quick late-night interview. Tell a few stories, laugh with Jimmy, wave to the crowd, go home. He had no idea one person hidden in that cheering audience was about to drag a forgotten promise out of his past and lay it bare under studio lights. The show was already in full swing when he walked onto the bright blue stage, the sound of applause rolling over him like a warm wave. Jimmy leaned across the desk, grinning, and they slipped into easy banter the way they always did. Keanu joked about his aging knees, about pulling off stunts he was probably too old and too Canadian to keep doing, and the crowd loved it. Every time the laughter hit, he glanced past the cameras and into the darkness where the audience sat, nodding, smiling, giving little waves to people he couldn't really see. To anyone watching, he looked relaxed, almost shy. Inside, though, he felt that familiar edge of exhaustion, the quiet ache of someone who had survived more life than he usually talked about on television. Hours earlier, he'd come through the backstage hallway alone, holding a paper cup of coffee and greeting every crew member he passed by name. He paused when he saw a nervous intern struggling with a stack of cue cards and helped gather them before they hit the floor, laughing it off as if an A-list movie star helping with office work was the most normal thing in the world. One of the camera operators teased him about the motorcycle he'd parked outside, and he lit up talking about open roads and late-night rides. But in the middle of all that easy kindness, there was a moment, just a flicker, when his gaze drifted toward the door that led to the audience seats, and something in his chest tightened for no reason he could name. Out in that darkened audience, near the aisle, a young woman in a red top was fighting to steady her breathing. Her name was Sarah, and the ticket clenched in her hand was wrinkled and damp from the sweat of the subway ride, the security line, the long wait under studio air conditioning that felt colder than it should. She had dreamed about this night for months, rewinding imaginary conversations in her head, rehearsing what she would say if she ever stood close enough to look Keanu Reeves in the eyes. But dreams were cleaner than reality. In reality, her heart hammered against the folded hospital bracelet she kept hidden in her pocket, and every time the band on her wrist brushed her fingertips, the past crashed over her so hard that for a second she couldn't even hear the jokes on stage. She kept seeing her brother, Daniel, sitting on a faded couch in their tiny apartment, eyes shining as he watched Keanu jump between cars on a battered TV screen. She remembered how those movies had been the last thing to make Daniel laugh when the chemo got bad, how Keanu's interviews about grief and loss had felt like someone out there understood what their family was going through. Sarah had built a strange kind of love around that face on the screen, gratitude, anger, hope, all tangled together. He was a hero and also, somehow, the only person she still blamed for a night she couldn't forget. Tonight wasn't about autographs or selfies. Tonight was about the question that had lived in her chest ever since an emergency room door had closed for the last time. On stage, the energy stayed light. Jimmy played a clip from Keanu's new action movie, glass exploding, cars flipping, Keanu rolling off a burning vehicle and coming up with that familiar, determined look. The audience gasped and cheered, some people clapping so hard they forgot they were on television. When the clip ended, Keanu shrugged, almost embarrassed, and told a story about refusing to let the stunt team use a double because it didn't feel honest, then admitting he'd ended up with a bruised rib and a stack of lecture emails from the insurance department. Jimmy wiped imaginary sweat from his forehead, the band hit a playful riff, and the crowd roared again. It was fun, easy, the kind of moment people rewatch online late at night when they want to feel a little lighter. Then Jimmy glanced at the clock off stage and turned back with that familiar sparkle in his eyes. "All right, we've got a little time left," he said, swiveling toward the audience. "Keanu, you good to take a couple questions from some folks here tonight?" The room erupted in cheers, hands shooting up like fireworks. Normally, the producers had chosen a few safe, pre-screened fans, people with soft questions about favorite movies and childhood memories. But one of the selected fans froze under the sudden blast of attention, her arm halfway raised, her courage vanishing as the camera lens pointed at her. Jimmy hesitated, reading the panic on her face, then laughed gently and glanced over the seats. "Hey, it's okay. Anyone else? Let's just open it up. Who's got something?" Sarah felt the moment crack open in front of her like a door she'd been waiting outside for years. Her first instinct was to shrink back, to stay small and invisible, to let someone else ask who Keanu would play in a superhero movie or which stunt hurt the most. But then her fingers brushed the hospital bracelet again, and in an instant she was back in that white room, the monitors beeping, Daniel's weak hand ghosting over hers as he whispered, "If you ever meet him, you have to ask." Fear surged through her, hot and bitter, but it collided with something stronger, an anger at herself for all the times she'd stayed silent, for all the nights she'd swallowed her words and let the pain burn holes inside her. Before she realized what her body had decided, Sarah was on her feet. The move was so sudden the people next to her flinched. An usher started toward her, then hesitated when Jimmy pointed in her direction, eyebrows raised with interest. A microphone appeared in her hand, cold and heavy. Keanu's eyes found her through the glare of the stage lights, and for a second, despite the distance and the cameras and the band and the millions who would watch later, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. He gave her the same gentle half-smile he'd given 100 fans before her, the one that said, "It's okay. Take your time. Say what you need to say." Her throat closed up. Every safe question she'd practiced vanished like smoke. The producers offstage shifted uneasily, sensing the tension but unable to stop what was already unfolding live. Sarah swallowed hard, the microphone trembling just a little in her hand, and forced the words out anyway. "Keanu," she said, her voice shaking but clear enough for every person in the studio and millions at home to hear. "Do you remember the night in Toronto when you promised you'd come back for us?" Silence drops over the studio so fast it feels like someone hit a mute button on the world. The applause dies mid-clap, a few stray laughs hanging in the air like they've lost their way. Jimmy's smile freezes, his eyes jump from Sarah to Keanu and back, already wondering what the control room is thinking. A red light flashes near the cameras, a signal that the segment is running long, but no one seems able to move. Keanu's expression changes slowly, the easy talk show grin softening into something quieter, more cautious. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, as if closing the distance might help him hear the past more clearly. "Toronto," he repeats, his voice low but steady. What night are you talking about?" It does not sound like denial. It sounds like a man sorting through a crowded attic, trying to find one particular box in the dark. Sarah swallows, fingers tightening around the microphone. There's a tremor in her hands, but her eyes don't fall away from his. "The children's ward at St. Michael's Hospital," she says. "About 10 years ago, you came to visit the oncology floor with some people from a charity. You brought DVDs and you did that slow-motion punch thing with the kids." A nervous ripple of laughter runs through the audience at the image, then vanishes as quickly as it came. "My brother was there, Daniel. The kid with the baseball cap that was way too big for him." The name hangs in the air like a challenge. For a moment, Keanu's face is blank, then something flickers barely there like the first spark catching on a match. The crowd watches him searching his memory in real time. Behind the cameras, a producer slices his hand across his throat, signaling Jimmy to cut to commercial. Jimmy glances at Keanu, quietly asking the question only he can answer. "Do you want out of this?" Keanu doesn't even look away from Sarah. "I remember the hospital," he says slowly. "Blue walls, right? And there was a mural with clouds. The kids drew on it." Sarah's breath catches because that mural had been Daniel's favorite. "I signed a skateboard for a boy who kept insisting he could kick my ass at video games." A few people in the audience chuckle. The tension doesn't break, but it shifts, making room for something more complicated than simple accusation. "He was in the room next door," Sarah says, her voice sharpening. "We had your posters all over the wall. He made our mom watch your movies on repeat until she knew the lines better than you did. When you walked in, he couldn't believe it was really you. You shook his hand, you sat on the edge of his bed, and you promised. You used that word. You promised you'd come back on Friday night to watch the new movie with him when it premiered. Just us. No cameras. You said you'd bring popcorn." The studio audience shifts uneasily, the weight of the story settling on their shoulders. At the desk, Jimmy's usual chatter has vanished. He's not a host now, he's just another person in the room, listening. On some invisible level, everyone understands they're no longer watching a promotional segment. They're watching two strangers stand on opposite sides of the same wound. "We waited," Sarah says, her eyes shining. "We decorated the room. I stole extra string lights from the nurse's station. He made a sign that said, 'Welcome back, Neo,' and taped it to the door. We counted down every hour. But you didn't come, not that night, not the next night, not ever." Her voice cracks on the last word, but she forces herself not to look away. Keanu's shoulders sag as if a weight has been lowered onto them. He stares at the floor for a heartbeat, then back at her, his brows pulling together. "I don't remember breaking that promise," he says quietly. I try not to make promises I can't keep." The statement isn't defensive. It sounds like it hurts him to say it. He presses his hand lightly against his chest, as if touching the place where his own buried grief lives. "Are you sure it was me?" Sarah's jaw tightens. She's been waiting for that question. "You signed his drawing," she says. "The motorcycle with wings, you wrote, 'To Daniel, see you Friday.' He kept it under his pillow like it was holy." Her voice becomes a whisper that still carries through the room. "I watched him believe you." Something in Keanu's eyes changes at those words. The confusion doesn't vanish, but it narrows, sharpens. The crowded attic of his memory suddenly has one box pulled to the front. He leans in, hands clasped together, and his next words come out in a tone that makes the audience lean closer too. "The motorcycle with wings," he repeats. His lips part as if some locked door inside him has just swung open. I know that drawing." The moment he says he knows the drawing, the air in the studio seems to tilt. Keanu leans back, eyes unfocused, as if a projector has switched on in his mind and only he can see the images. "He drew it with a thick black marker," he murmurs. "The back wheel was way too big. He said it needed wings so it could go anywhere, even out of the hospital." His voice grows softer on that last line, and the audience shifts, realizing this isn't small talk anymore. There's a rawness in him that doesn't match the polished lights of late-night TV. A memory pulls him all the way back. He sees the fluorescent hallway, the smell of antiseptic and overcooked cafeteria food. Kids with shaved heads and superhero blankets. He remembers kneeling beside a bed where a boy in a cap pushed the drawing toward him with shy confidence. "You can borrow my bike whenever," the boy had joked, and they'd both laughed as Keanu signed his name with a flourish he hoped looked cooler than he felt. Just before he left the room, someone had tugged at his sleeve. "You'll come back Friday, right?" the boy asked. The schedule in his pocket was already overflowing, but the hope in the kid's eyes felt like something sacred. "Yeah," he'd said without thinking twice. "Friday, I promise." Keanu swallows hard. The rest of that week comes back in jagged pieces. The Friday in question, he'd wrapped a press interview early, thrown on his black motorcycle helmet, and told his driver to take the night off. The city streets were slick from a light rain, neon reflecting off puddles like broken glass. Halfway to the hospital, a delivery van blew a red light. He remembers the screech of tires, the sudden blur, the sickening lift of his body leaving the bike. Then nothing but darkness and the taste of metal, and a paramedic's voice somewhere far away saying, "Sir, stay with me. We've got you." "I was in an accident that night," he says, finally lifting his gaze to meet Sarah's. There's no drama in his tone, just a tired honesty. "On my way to the hospital, I woke up in another one with a concussion and a lot of people yelling at me about broken ribs and paperwork." The audience makes a low, stunned sound. No one expected that turn. Keanu shakes his head, anger at himself surfacing. "I asked my team to call the ward. I thought they did. I thought they would reschedule. But I never got a list of the kids' names. I never knew who I'd let down." Sarah hears every word, but part of her still feels like that teenager in the too-bright room, waiting with a bowl of cold popcorn and a brother who tried to laugh off his disappointment. "We didn't get a call," she says, each syllable landing like a stone. "No one from the hospital said anything. They just kept saying schedules change. Celebrities are busy, that's how it goes." Her hand tightens around the microphone so hard her knuckles whiten. "He stayed awake until 2 in the morning just in case you were stuck in traffic." She pauses, breath catching. "He didn't stay awake the next night." The words hit harder than any punch Keanu has taken on camera. For a second, the set around him dissolves, the desk, the band, the cameras all gone. He only sees a boy with a too big cap and a paper motorcycle with wings. "Sarah," he whispers, the sound barely reaching the mic. Is he? He can't quite finish the question, but everyone in the room already knows what he's asking. Sarah blinks and a single tear finally escapes, making a shining trail down her cheek. He died on Sunday morning, she says, her voice small but unwavering. The last thing he said about you was, maybe something important came up. It's okay, don't be mad at him. She laughs once, a brittle sound that hurts more than any sob. I promised him I wouldn't be, and I've been breaking that promise ever since. No one in the studio seems to breathe. Jimmy's eyes are glassy. One of the camera operators wipes at his face with the back of his hand, forgetting for a moment that he's supposed to stay invisible. The band sits frozen, instruments silent on their laps. Millions of people are watching a live show, but what's happening on stage doesn't feel like television anymore. It feels like two lives crashing into each other at the exact point where they both broke. Keanu's jaw works as he tries to find words that don't sound cheap or rehearsed. I am so deeply sorry, he says finally, each word careful like he's afraid of stepping on shattered glass. Not as an actor, not as some guy on your brother's poster, just as a man who made a promise to a kid who trusted him and didn't keep it. His eyes shine now, and he doesn't bother to hide it. I didn't know about the call that never came. I didn't know his name was Daniel. But I know what it's like to lose people too soon. If I could trade every stunt I ever did to take back that night for him, I would. Sarah feels something inside her crack at the quiet sincerity in his voice. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways, him brushing her off, blaming security, laughing awkwardly, and moving on. She had prepared counter-arguments, anger polished like armor. She hadn't prepared for him to look like this, shoulders bent under a weight she can suddenly tell he's carried for years. But the anger doesn't vanish. It twists with something softer, more painful. You were his hero, she says, lower now. When you didn't come, it was like the universe agreed that he didn't matter. I know that's not fair, but that's how it felt. Like the world was saying, you're just another sick kid, people forget you. Keanu nods slowly, accepting the blow instead of dodging it. You're right, he answers. It's not fair, but feelings don't have to be fair to be real. He glances briefly at Jimmy, then back to Sarah, making a choice. I can tell you I was on a gurney that night. I can show you scars and paperwork and try to prove I didn't just decide a promise to a kid didn't matter. He shakes his head. Or I can stand here and tell you the truth that hurts more. Sometimes, even with good intentions, we fail people. And the ones who pay for those failures aren't the ones with fame or movie sets. They're the ones lying in those hospital beds. A long pause stretches out, dense with all the things both of them wish had gone differently. Sarah's chest rises and falls with uneven breaths. She reaches into the small canvas bag she's been clutching since she walked into the studio. I wasn't planning to do this, she says softly, more to herself than to the room. I thought I was just going to yell at you and feel better for 5 minutes. Her fingers fumble with a folded, yellowed sheet of paper, the edges worn thin. But I brought this in case I lost my nerve. An usher steps forward and she hands the paper off reluctantly, as if it might fall apart if anyone else touches it. The usher crosses the studio and passes it to Keanu. The camera catches his hands as he carefully unfolds it. There it is, the motorcycle with wings, lines shaky but determined, a tiny stick figure rider with wild hair. At the bottom, in faded marker, his own handwriting stares back at him. To Daniel, see you Friday. His throat tightens. Then he notices something else. Written underneath in smaller, messier letters, a different color ink. He squints, reading aloud without meaning to. If you can't come, it's okay. Thank you for trying. Daniel. The words hit like a gentle punch straight to the heart. The audience collectively exhales, a soft, aching sound. Sarah's eyes widen. She looks as startled as anyone else. I never saw that, she stammers. He must have written it after I fell asleep that night. I found the drawing under his pillow, but I never turned it over. Keanu traces the child's scrawl with his thumb, his voice rough. He forgave me before I even failed him, he says. The realization is both devastating and strangely merciful. He looks up at Sarah, and in his gaze there is grief, yes, but also a fierce, determined kindness. You've been carrying anger for both of you all these years, he tells her. But this kid, your brother, he was carrying something else. He was carrying grace. He glances around the studio, then straight into a camera, as if he's speaking to more than just the people in the room. I couldn't keep that one promise to Daniel. I can't change that, but I can decide what I do with it now. He stands up, breaking the usual rhythm of the show, the desk suddenly looking too small for what's unfolding. The director in the control room shouts orders, but the cameras keep rolling. No one dares cut away. Keanu turns to Jimmy, then to the audience. "How long do we have left?" he asks. Jimmy glances at a producer, stunned. 3 minutes before the next break." Keanu nods like a man making a decision on a movie set before the stunt clock runs out. "Then I want to use them," he says, voice steadying with purpose. "Not to sell a movie, not to look good. I want to ask you something, Sarah, and maybe ask everyone watching at home, too." He steps closer to the edge of the stage, still holding Daniel's drawing like something sacred. "Will you help me keep a different promise tonight, one we can actually keep?"